Good evening, you're watching The Right Stand here on CNN News 18 with me, Poonam Burde. Let's begin with the highlights of the day. Two 8th century temple idols that were stolen from India and discovered in England are now being brought to India. The Yogini Chamunda and Yogini Gomukhi idols were stolen from a temple in Uttar Pradesh between late 1970s and 1980s. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar presided over the repatriation ceremony in London on the last day of his UK visit. India's goods exports jumped to 6.21% to $33.57 billion in October. In overall exports, major contributions came in from sectors like drugs and pharma, engineering goods, electronic goods, handloom products and glassware. The famous Sabrimala Ayyappa temple opened this evening for the 2-month-long Mandalam pilgrimage. This time, there are stone pillars that have been erected in the temple at the entrance that are expected to win the hearts of the devotees. The pillars are part of an under-construction hydraulic roof for the temple. Jimmy Kimmel is returning as the host of the Academy Awards for the second straight year and for the 4th time overall. The 2023 ceremony drew 18.7 million viewers, perhaps prompting the Academy to ensure that the late-night show host returns. The 96th Academy Awards will air on the 10th of March 2024. Now on to our top focus, and that is the rising anti-India hate in Canada. Now, I may sound like a broken record because many of you must have heard me say the exact same thing 48 hours ago on this very show. We were talking about Canada giving a free run to pro-Khalistani sentiment. Unfortunately, this is the reality under the Trudeau administration. It all began on the 18th of September when Justin Trudeau alleged that India is involved in Khalistani terrorist Hardeep Singh Nijjar's death. They expelled an Indian diplomat over it. That charge was repeated just a few days ago. But close to a month later, the Trudeau administration has failed to provide any evidence to substantiate that claim. Since then, India, both through words and action, has cornered Canada. Diplomats were sent packing, citing the Vienna Convention on rank and strength parity. Visas were halted in Canada, citing security reasons, and on the global fora, India revealed Canada's track record of turning a blind eye to the rising K movement. The latest rebuke coming in from S. Jaishankar, the External Affairs Minister, during his trip to the United Kingdom. First up, he reminded everyone that Canada has given space to violent and extreme political opinions for decades together. This is not a new phenomenon. That they advocate separatism from India through violent means. S. Jaishankar also said that Canada didn't act when the Indian High Commissioner and diplomats were attacked. Their safety was put in jeopardy and Canada did nothing. On the Nijjar case, S. Jaishankar came out and said that we've not seen any evidence yet as far as the allegations are. They're credible allegations is what Justin Trudeau has said, but where is the evidence is the clear question India is asking. S. Jaishankar also added that Nijjar's social media posts are graphic and that he held public positions. Another reminder that such elements have not been just accommodated but given full platform in Canada. No matter how many times India shames Canada on the world stage, there seems to be very little political will to stop this anti-India hate. In the last 3 days, we've seen 3 different instances, if not more, of Khalistani supporters running amok there. Hindus in Brampton who were celebrating Diwali were attacked on the 13th of November. They were holding Khalistani flags, these attackers. They pelted stones at Hindus and hurled abuses at them, as you can see. Surprisingly, there were cops that were present at this event. They were mute spectators, did not take any action. Then a day later, on the 14th of November, some new videos emerged from Abbotsford. Here, the Sikhs for Justice organization disrupted an Indian consulate event where life certificates were issued to few community members. These K-goons also targeted a local Sikh family because they attempted to pick up an Indian flag from the ground which was being disrespected by these people. Even the elderly were not spared by the pro-Khalistani sympathizers. Now again, Sikhs for Justice group has threatened to disrupt an upcoming event in Brampton. The event in Mississauga is also something that is on the radar if they are not called off. A poster has now been released by the Khalistani outfit that claims that India is actually trying to build a spy network in Canada to these certificate camps. These posters also have the image of Hardeep Singh Nijjar and a call for his killer. Now, India's High Commissioner walks around with a target on his back in Canada. Even the highest diplomat of this country is not safe, many would say, because of pro-Khalistani sympathizers there and people like Gurpatwant Singh Pannoon. Pannoon, the founder of the outlawed Sikhs for Justice, is offered a cash reward now for citizen's arrest of Indian High Commissioner Sanjay Verma. He accused the Indian diplomat of raising the bogey, this is what he said, of a terror threat to Air India, when in reality, it was Pannoon who released a video not too long ago threatening passengers of Air India flights on the 19th of November. This is the day of the ICC World Cup final in Ahmedabad here in India. Canadian officials, in fact, even initiated an investigation after Pannoon's video asking Sikhs to not fly via Air India on November 19th came out. In that video, he said, don't travel on Air India flights on 19th of November or your life will be in danger because there is going to be a global blockade. Now, Canada's shield to Khalistani sympathizers is not new. In the past, there have been several instances where Canadian government has exposed their soft corner. Let's take a look at some of those instances. In 1974, India's nuclear tests strained Canada-India relations due to the alleged military use of Canada-provided Candu reactors. This coincided with the rise of the Khalistani movement in Punjab. Now, the man who plotted the horrific bombing of the 1985 of an Air India plane off Ireland, which killed 331 passengers, Talvinder Singh Parmar, was sheltered in Canada. Under Justin Trudeau's father, Pierre Trudeau, in fact, the Canadian government refused to extradite him to India. Then in 1985, the High Commission of India presented a diplomatic note to the Department of External Affairs regarding the threat to Indian diplomatic missions or to Air India aircraft by these extremist elements. Again, what was the response? No action. In 2002, Toronto-based Punjabi Language Weekly greeted Indira's death anniversary with a cover illustration of her being murdered and a headline that urged readers honor the martyrs who killed the sinner. This magazine received government advertisements. It's now a prominent daily in Canada. No action then either. In 2010 and 2012, former Prime Minister of India, Dr. Manmohan Singh, had warned his Canadian counterpart over the rising support amongst Canadian Sikhs for Khalistani elements and for them trying to foment trouble in Punjab, and yet absolutely no action. This is just the track record which S. Jaishankar was also speaking of, that there is no political will, there never has been for decades together as far as crushing this anti-India sentiment in Canada is concerned. So does Justin Trudeau have any defense left? That's the big debate tonight.
We have tried to work constructively and positively with India, and we will continue to. This is not a fight we want to be having right now.
Canadian politics has given space to violent and extreme political opinions, advocate separatism from India, including through violent means.
Hello, Moto.
Joining me on this broadcast, Lieutenant General KJ Singh, defense expert, former Indian diplomat Rajiv Dogra. But I want to begin this broadcast and I want to begin this debate by asking my first question to a columnist who joins us from Toronto, Dean Baxendale. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us here on this broadcast. And Mr. Baxendale, I would like to ask you, why do you think we see this lack of political will? Or why do we see a repeat of this ever-rising hate against India, this ever-rising Khalistani movement in Canada?
Well, thank you for having me on. Actually, I'm in Washington today meeting on a number of key issues around diaspora communities globally. I think, once again, I don't understand. India is a great ally of Canada. We have 1.4 million diaspora community members originating from India, both Sikh and Hindu, as well as Muslim. But this continued rise in this rhetoric, and in Canada not wanting to actually combat these issues where terrorist elements and extremist elements get a voice under some sort of perception that they should have free speech rights, and yet we see them attacking individuals of the Hindu community, at large, at events. This is not free and fair protest, and quite frankly, the Canadian government and the intelligence agencies in Canada have a duty to protect all Canadian citizens from such violence and extremism. But these kinds of things have been leveraged, and unfortunately, we have an NDP leader who has also shown his kinship or certainly sympathy towards the Sikh separatist movement inside Canada. And of course, Justin Trudeau's government is hanging in the balance based on the alliance between the NDP and the Liberals.
Yes, but it's not just Justin Trudeau. We've seen this through decades, really, and this is just how it's been. There has been always pleas that have fallen on deaf ears. These attacks that have been turned a blind eye to, and unfortunately nothing changes. For decades together, India has been raising these issues, and Rajiv Dogra, I want to get you in on that. One government after another, there just seems to be no political will. I mean, the highest envoy diplomat of our country, the High Commissioner there, is walking around with a target on his back.
Well, you're right. It all started with Justin Trudeau's father, Pierre Trudeau, when he was the Prime Minister of Canada. He was told by his own intelligence agencies that these Sikh terrorists are planning to plant a bomb in one of the Air India aircraft, which is exactly what happened in 1985. So he ignored all those warnings. So he has the blood of 300 plus Indians and Canadian citizens on his hands. He is gone, but he's transferred that legacy to his son. Now, the first thing Canada should have done was to have extradited those responsible for that aircraft's bombing in 1985. It did not do that. In fact, it has done the exact opposite by releasing the terrorists prematurely. The second thing is, a sense of wonder I have. Why is it that every 5-6 days, Justin Trudeau, the present Prime Minister of Canada, gets up, says something which makes no sense for a Prime Minister to be saying? I mean, last 6 months, he's only been saying that there are allegations. Then this time, he's gone a step forward and he says he doesn't want to fight with India. I mean, is it a wrestling match that he's the Prime Minister of? What also surprises me is that every time his opinion ratings go down in Canada, he comes up with this same formula of allegations and fight and so on. Now, over 6 months, are his intelligence agencies in a better position to tell us who the murderers were? Do they have the car numbers? Do they have photographs of the murderers? Have they captured them, or have they vanished in thin air? Or is it that the murderers were from the party which is supporting Justin Trudeau, and it was all an in-house job planned to put India in a corner? And that is what he started doing from his first statement. So, there are more question marks than answers in his consistency in being inconsistent with what he is saying. He has no proof at all. He refuses to share any evidence. Otherwise, normally he would have even gone public with the evidence that he had. Obviously, he keeps saying we have given evidence without showing any proof of that evidence. So, Justin Trudeau is putting Canada in a spot which even Pakistan was not, because Pakistan never admitted to any terrorism, whereas Justin Trudeau is sleeping with the terrorists in his cabinet. He's got his coalition partners as declared Khalistani terrorists. So Canada is going a couple of steps beyond what Pakistan was as a terror state. So I think Canadian people need to watch out what they are heading in for and the trouble that stares them in the face, not just from Khalistani terrorists, but from terrorists all across the world who find refuge in Canada.
Right, and it's domestic compulsions perhaps, Dean Baxendale, the fact that popularity that currently Trudeau has, or the lack thereof, if I could say so, that is perhaps why we're seeing him make comments like this, perhaps trying to divert attention of his voters, of his countrymen, from the actual issues that matter.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. Unfortunately, we've now created an international incident with a close ally and a values-based society in India that we need to combat other, geopolitical threats. Why Justin Trudeau has leveraged this for his own political gain obviously could be seen by the poll numbers, and it's tragic that we are, playing, footloose and fancy free with facts and information. However, I will say once again, and I have said this on your program before, I think at this particular point in time, there is going to be no evidence coming forward to demonstrate this, given the actual ongoing investigation. Having said that, I think that the diplomacy here between the two nations has been clearly lacking in the sharing of information and insights on both sides. And we have done very little, to your point and your last guest's comments, to actually combat any of this kind of extremism inside the country.
And it's not just extremism that's rising, Lieutenant General Cage is saying, isn't it? It's organized crime that also Justin Trudeau seems to not be caring about. We see these gang wars break out every now and then, especially in the last 6 to 8 months. That is something that India has also been pointing to, that there is organized crime there, and that is something perhaps they should look into, because they are linked. We are seeing these kind of gang wars that take place and the anti-India sentiment that is being whipped up, and you cannot isolate one from the other.
See, Poonam, Jai Hind, thank you for having me on your show. The problem is Canada has allowed a kind of a very sort of open or very lax kind of an ecosystem where large number of players are operating. There are gangsters from India who are holed up there and they are operating from there. There is evidence of China having set up police stations, illegal ones, and having applied coercion on Canadian citizens. There is also talk of ISI agents who had eliminated Balochi activists who were living in Canada. Now, with this kind of environment where it is a free for all, you have somebody like Hardeep Singh Nijjar, who definitely was not an above board personality. He was dealing in a lot of things, extortion. See, entire music industry in Punjab, there is extortion taking place. And the people who control that extortion are sitting in Canada. So, now Nijjar was part of, some people say drugs, some people say extortion, some people say taking money from Gurdwaras. So, where is the guarantee who has, or how can we prove that who's done this? With so many players there. Some people say Chinese could have engineered it. So the best thing for Trudeau is to give the evidence, clear evidence. If there is something sensitive, give it in a sealed cover. Give it to India. And Dr. Jas Shankar has said, we are not averse to investigation. Investigation can take place. But the start point is evidence. Evidence has to be provided. And Poonam, you are right. The effect of all this is taking place in Punjab. There is unchecked kind of activities which take place here. Extortion takes place. Music industry is under coercion. We've had incidents of bombing and other things where links have been traced back to Canada. Gang warfare is taking place and with effect in Punjab. So naturally we are concerned. We can't allow, Punjab is a border state.
Yes.
We can't allow Canadian people sitting there enjoying immunity, running the show over here. And I am particularly concerned that, see, this party, Liberal Party, whenever it is in power, it crosses all thresholds. Conservatives are still a little better. Though there is a laissez-faire which is taking place in Canada and which needs to be put in correct sort of rules have to be put in place. But especially the Liberal Party and supported by Jagmeet Dhaliwal. This is a cause for concern. And I hope Trudeau sees some sense And like your other columnists are saying, rightly so, it's not only Sikhs over there. There are Hindus, there are students. We have lots to do with Canada. India is thinking of making now Striker sort of amphibious wheeled vehicles.
Yes.
They are made in a plant in collaboration in Canada. So many things can take place with
Absolutely,
Canadians.
and there is a lot at stake. It's not just diplomatic ties. In terms of trade as well, India is an extremely important partner as far as Canada is concerned, and these are things that the Canadian administration must not gloss over. And Dean Baxendale, I also want to get you in, because as far as the Niger case is concerned, India has been categorically saying, where is the evidence? Show us the proof, and we're open to an investigation. But even when we had Justin Trudeau stand up on the floor of the parliament and say and make this allegation, he said credible allegations. He didn't say there was credible evidence. So many would wonder, is there evidence at all to begin with?
Well, exactly. That's what I said earlier also.
It's a very good question.
Yes,
I think,
Mr. Baxendale.
The Prime Minister would not have, come forward if he did not have some credible insights of whether or not the direct evidence to which all of the Indian population would like to hear, and so to the government of India, whether or not that's forthcoming openly or not is another question. And I think at this particular point in time, given the ongoing investigation being conducted by the RCMP, probably in cooperation with our domestic intelligence services, that they're not going to release any information publicly. So what I would hope for is, my apologies, what I would hope for is that that diplomats open up the channels to have a discussion, to show or demonstrate what kind of proof that they have, and share that information with officials within the Indian government. And we should get this, we should bring this out of the public light and solve it behind the scenes at this particular point in time. That, I think, would be prudent for both countries.
Sure, maybe not publicly, but between the two countries, the evidence must be shared, or perhaps the Trudeau administration must restrain itself from making these public comments, because it was really them who started making these comments publicly. So you cannot have a situation where you make the allegations public, but when the other party asks you for proof, then you want meetings behind closed doors. But let me talk about the diplomacy of this, Rajiv Dogra. What next? We've seen the kind of actions that India has taken, including sending some of the diplomats back, citing the Vienna Convention, that there has to be parity as far as rank and strength is concerned. There were also reports that suggested that many of them were, trying to foment trouble here in India because they had diplomatic immunity. From here, where do we go on next? Because right after that happened, we saw Canada come out and make more outrageous allegations against us.
Well, I think before I answer that, let me make it very clear that sharing evidence with public and in public is not unprecedented. We do it all the time. When we see a terror attack happening on our soil and we have some evidence that these people were involved in that terror attack, and if we have their photographs, we give it to the media. That's what an open society is about. We don't make allegations, but we provide the proof of their involvement in a terror attack. So does America. So does any number of other countries. Why is Canada fighting shy of giving us at least photographic evidence in public of the people they allege to have murdered Niger? And I'll repeat it again, that unless their own people were involved and they don't want to give any evidence, I mean, there are videos of the car going away from the scene of murder. Don't they have the number plate of that car? Don't they know where it vanished? And it was an old car. There won't be millions of such cars in Canada. So Canada obviously has more to hide than evidence to give. Secondly, coming to the issue of next steps and what diplomacy is involved, let me also make it very clear that Vienna Convention makes it very amply clear that it is up to the host country to decide how many diplomats of a foreign country should stay on its soil. And it was strictly according to Vienna Convention that India took the step of asking Canada to withdraw 40 of its diplomats.
Yes.
Because India felt they were excessive in terms of staffing. India also felt that they were interfering in internal affairs of India, just as some of the terrorists and Sikh extremists, the Khalistani extremists, are doing sitting in Canadian soil. So India has reason to be concerned, and the next steps would be a natural of its concern, and the natural of its concern is that Canada must forthwith stop such activities which hurt India's interests, and in its own interest Canada must stop these activities, because 1.3 million or thereabouts Indian people of Indian origin reside in Canada, and tomorrow they can be attacked by these extremists. Moreover, there are about 200 to 300,000 Indian students at any time studying in Canada who bring in billions of dollars every year to Canadian exchequer.
Absolutely. Like I said, it's not just about the diplomacy or the diplomatic relations. There's also a lot of money at stake, which is why Canada needs to take this seriously. I'm unfortunately out of time, but I want to get in one last word from Lieutenant General KJ Singh. Canada must take action, but we rarely see that action happen. Video after video comes out. We see all of it being caught on CCTV footage, and some of them you can actually see the policemen standing there, right there, and doing nothing. What can we expect then from the Canadian authorities?
Poonam, it's very sad. It's unfortunate. India has taken it up with USA. India has sensitized UK, the other members of these I5 countries. It's time Canada enforces law and order and security for its citizens. A country cannot become lawless like this, and if you allow it to spin it out of control, it'll become a riot over there, and you are destroying amity which is between communities over there.
Yes.
Traditionally, like in Punjab, Sikhs and Hindus live side by side. There is no such kind of a feeling or enmity. Diwali is celebrated together. All festivals are celebrated like this. So why shouldn't it happen in Canada? I just can't understand. A fringe element is allowed to hijack the agenda, is allowed to gain publicity, do irrational activities, and that's all allowed because police is standing by. It's very unfortunate. And it's, Canadian police at one time had a very good reputation.
Yes.
Royal Canadian Mounted Police. We in security structures cited that, like Scotland Yard, like Royal Canadian Mounted Police. And now we have come to a stage that it is free for all.
Yes, and their intelligence agencies too, they were known to be above par as well. Unfortunately though, they cannot track down people who are attacking Hindus there, who are attacking Indians there, completely running amok, absolutely no action being taken against there, which makes us wonder if it's just the lack of political will and nothing else as to why we don't see any action. Unfortunately, this continues. We keep having this debate every now and then. Nothing really changes on ground, specifically as far as action being taken by Canada is concerned. And that only brings us to the question if Justin Trudeau has any defense left anymore. I have to leave it at that. I thank you all gentlemen for joining us here on this broadcast of The Right Stand. We are shifting our focus to closer back home, and it is to Rajasthan, which is a poll-bound state. On 25th of November, the state goes to elections. Agenda Rajasthan is a Network 18 event that we're going to cut across to, where BJP chief JP Nadda is sharing what his party's prospects look like.
नड्डा जी, आपका अभिनंदन है न्यूज 18 के मंच पर। हमारे कई चैनल्स के माध्यम से करोड़ों दर्शक इस समय आपको लाइव देख रहे हैं। 5 राज्यों में चुनाव है, 3 दिसंबर को नतीजे आएंगे। दूसरी तरफ विश्व कप भी चल रहा है, क्रिकेट वर्ल्ड कप भी चल रहा है, जहां टीम इंडिया सारे मैच जीत रही है। बीजेपी का क्या स्कोर रहने वाला है इस बार 5 राज्यों में?
देखिए, दोनों ही मैचेस में उधर इंडिया जीतेगी और यहां भारतीय जनता पार्टी जीतेगी। ये जो 5 राज्यों के चुनाव हो रहे हैं, इसमें राजस्थान में हम 2/3 मेजॉरिटी के साथ आ रहे हैं। हम मध्य प्रदेश में कमबैक हम कर रहे हैं, वापसी हमारी हो रही है। छत्तीसगढ़ में हम बहुत अच्छे तरीके से सरकार बनाने की तरफ चल पड़े हैं और तेलंगाना में हम एक डिसाइसिव फोर्स रहेंगे
जी,
और मिजोरम में एनडीए रिटेन करेगी। तो इसलिए जैसे हम 5वां मैच भी जीतने वाले हैं, वैसे ही इंडिया जीतने वाली है, वैसे ही भारतीय जनता पार्टी भी एक तरीके से स्वीप करेगी चुनाव को, ये आप देखने वाले हैं
जी। लेकिन एक सवाल है कि बीजेपी राजस्थान और मध्य प्रदेश में इतनी कॉन्फिडेंट है, तो एक सवाल बनता है कि सांसदों को, मंत्रियों को चुनाव में क्यों उतारना पड़ा है? स्थानीय नेता भी तो थे।
देखिए, आप सब लोग जो राजनीतिक विश्लेषक हैं
जी,
वो हमारे हर फैसले के बारे में बहुत प्रश्न खड़े करते हैं
जी।
अंत में जीत हमारी ही होती है। ये रणनीति का विषय होता है और रणनीति पर्दे का विषय होता है, और पर्दा तब उठता है जब फाइनल नतीजे आते हैं। इसलिए हम ये क्यों करते हैं, कैसे करते हैं, हम हर चुनाव को पूरी ताकत के साथ लड़ते हैं, पूरी शिद्दत के साथ लड़ते हैं और पूरी योजना के साथ लड़ते हैं। और हमारे जो भी नेता हैं वो प्रथम दृष्टि से कार्यकर्ता हैं, इसलिए कार्यकर्ता भाव से जो उनको कहा जाता है कि आपको ये चुनाव लड़ना है, वो लड़ते हैं। कभी हम कहते हैं तुमको दिल्ली जाना है, वो दिल्ली जाते हैं।
लेकिन कुछ विश्लेषक कहते हैं बीजेपी डरी हुई है, इसीलिए सांसदों और विधायकों को उतार दिया। कांग्रेस तो बहुत कटाक्ष करती है इसके ऊपर।
ऐसा है ना, वो इतने हक्के बक्के क्यों हैं? ये हमारे घर का फैसला है, हमने फैसला किया, आपको तकलीफ क्यों हो रही है? ये आपकी तकलीफ यही बताती है कि हमारी स्ट्रेटेजी सही है और हम सही दिशा में जा रहे हैं।
जी, आज भारतीय जनता पार्टी का राजस्थान का संकल्प पत्र आया है, घोषणा पत्र जिसे कहते हैं, मैनिफेस्टो आया है। उसमें 2.5 लाख बेरोजगारों को नौकरी देने की बात है, 450 का सिलेंडर देने की बात है, 12th पास लड़कियों को स्कूटी देने का वादा है। ये लोक लुभावन वादे हैं और इसका फिस्कल डेफिसिट पर, यानी प्रदेश की अर्थव्यवस्था पर खराब असर पड़ सकता है। ये एक क्रिटिकल अप्रोच निकल के आई है। व्हाट्स योर टेक ऑन दैट?
देखिए अमीश भाई, मैं आपको बताऊं, मैंने इस पर बहुत पहले भी कहा और हमेशा कहता रहता हूं, देयर इज अ डिफरेंस बिटवीन फ्रीबीज एंड मेकिंग एंड एम्पावरिंग द पर्सन। एक तरफ आप किसी को स्वावलंबन की ओर ले जाने के लिए उसका आप हाथ पकड़ करके उसको ताकत की ओर ले जाते हैं, इसको हम कहते हैं एम्पावरमेंट, इसको हम कहते हैं सशक्तिकरण, इसको हम कहते हैं उनका स्वावलंबन बनाने का रास्ता। वो स्वावलंबी बने, इसके लिए हम प्रयास कर रहे हैं। हम गैस के सिलेंडर में सब्सिडी किसको दे रहे हैं? उज्ज्वला योजना को। उज्ज्वला योजना किसके पास है? जो बेचारा गैस का सिलेंडर नहीं खरीद सकता था, जो गैस का चूल्हा नहीं खरीद सकता था,
जी,
लकड़ियां जला करके काम करते थे। तो मोदी जी ने उज्ज्वला योजना में उनको फ्री गैस का कनेक्शन दिया। अब सिलेंडर की भी आवश्यकता है, उसमें भी हमको सपोर्ट करना है। तो ये वो लोग हैं जिनके सशक्तिकरण से देश सशक्तिकरण की ओर बढ़ता है, उसके लिए हम काम करते हैं।
एक सवाल
हम आयुष्मान भारत,
जी,
आयुष्मान भारत में हम किसको देते हैं? जो समाज का वो वर्ग है जो आर्थिक दृष्टि से पिछड़ गया है। और वो कौन लोग हैं? 50 करोड़ लोग हैं। वो कौन लोग हैं? रेड़ी वाला, रिक्शा वाला, ठेला वाला, फेड़ी वाला, बस का ड्राइवर, बस का क्लीनर, लिफ्ट मैन, ये ऐसे लोग हैं। रैग पिकर, जो कूड़ेदान से प्लास्टिक इकट्ठा करते हैं, वो लोग हैं। ऐसे लोगों को गंभीर बीमारी से लड़ने के लिए मोदी जी ने 5 लाख रुपए सालाना उनकी आर्थिक व्यवस्था की है, और उसको अब हम 10 लाख कर रहे हैं। तो ये जो है, ये आर्थिक दृष्टि से जो हम उनका सशक्तिकरण करते हैं, दिस इज एम्पावरमेंट। हमने ये कभी नहीं कहा हम फ्री बिजली देंगे, जिसको जरूरत भी नहीं है उसको भी हम देंगे। हमने कभी नहीं कहा कि हम तुमको ये फ्री देंगे, हम पात्र को देंगे। अब जैसे हम स्कूटी दे रहे हैं, किसको दे रहे हैं? मेरिटोरियस गर्ल हु इज इकोनॉमिकली वीकर सेक्शन। तो वो, उसको स्कूटी क्या है? वो आगे बढ़ने का रास्ता है। किसी की मेडिकल कॉलेज में एडमिशन हो जाती है, उसको हम 50,000 देते हैं, वो उसको डॉक्टर बनाने के लिए एक रास्ता है। आगे उसका परिवार, वो डॉक्टर बनेगी।
आप कह रहे हैं ये रेवड़ी नहीं है,
ये सशक्तिकरण है,
ये
स्वावलंबन है,
ये स्वावलंबन है। मेरा अगला सवाल है कि एक
और उनकी रेवड़ियां हैं,
उनकी रेवड़ियां हैं, लेकिन फिर सवाल उठेगा कि वो तो रेवड़ी दे रहे हैं और आप सशक्तिकरण कर रहे हैं, तो फिर जब कांग्रेस की सरकारें सस्ते सिलेंडर दे रही हैं, वो सशक्तिकरण क्यों नहीं है?
मैं फिर आपको बताता हूं कि हमें इसमें कहां आपत्ति है, लेकिन उनके बाकी सारी चीजों को तो आप देख लीजिए ना, वो तो सारी की सारी रेवड़ियां होती हैं।
जी, मेरा अगला सवाल है कि एक बीजेपी पे लगातार अब तो इस आरोप को लगते हुए एक जमाना हो गया है, बीजेपी के लिए आरोप लगता है कि बीजेपी इलेक्शन खुद तो लड़ती है, बीजेपी की इलेक्शन मशीनरी होती है, लेकिन ईडी भी होती है, सीबीआई भी होता है, आईटी डिपार्टमेंट भी होता है, और कांग्रेस कह रही है हमारे पास गारंटी होती है और वो गारंटी हमें कर्नाटक में जीत दिला के गई है।
दो चीजें हैं, पहले आपने कहा कि हमारे साथ ईडी होती है, सीबीआई होती है, सब कुछ होती है। कौन सा ऐसा केस है जिस केस में किसी नेता को रिलीफ मिला हो? कौन सा ऐसा केस है जिसमें वो कह सकते हैं कि नहीं ईडी ने गलत रेड किया? कौन सा ऐसा केस है जिसमें वो कह सकते हैं कि ईडी ने गलत केस बनाया? और कौन सा ऐसा केस है जिसमें वो कहीं कोर्ट में गए, एक तो गए नहीं, अगर गए तो उनको राहत मिली है? इसका मतलब आप भ्रष्टाचारी हैं, और भ्रष्टाचारी को लाल किले के प्राचीर से प्रधानमंत्री मोदी जी ने बड़े स्पष्ट शब्दों में कहा है कि भ्रष्टाचार बर्दाश्त नहीं किया जाएगा।
लेकिन एक सवाल है कि सारे भ्रष्टाचारी विपक्ष में ही मिल रहे हैं और ईडी भी विपक्ष के नेताओं का ही डोरबेल बजा रही है, तो दरवाजे खटखटा रही है।
ये हमारी पार्टी में जिस तरीके से हम लोगों को ग्रो कराते हैं, यही तो नीयत का फर्क होता है। मैं तो आज अपने भाषण में बोल रहा हूं कि कांग्रेस वहां होगी जहां भ्रष्टाचार होगा, कांग्रेस वहां होगी जहां अनाचार होगा, कांग्रेस वहां होगी जहां पर व्यभिचार होगा, कांग्रेस वहां होगी जहां रक्षक भक्षक बना हुआ होगा। आफ्टर ऑल, व्हाट इज द मॉरल स्ट्रेंथ टुडे विथ अशोक गहलोत दैट सच ए लॉ एंड ऑर्डर सिचुएशन हैज कम इन हियर इन राजस्थान, जहां महिलाओं के उत्पीड़न में और रेप केसेस में नंबर 1 पर राजस्थान को खड़ा कर दिया, जो संस्कारों में जाना जाने वाला राजस्थान था, जो शांतप्रिय राजस्थान था। तो ये कैसे हुआ है? ये इसलिए हुआ है क्योंकि आपने पॉलिटिक्स के खातिर लोगों के साथ कॉम्प्रोमाइज करते हुए, नियम को ताक पर रखते हुए रक्षक को भक्षक बनने में प्रेरित किया।
आपने अशोक गहलोत की बात करी, तो बीजेपी, प्रधानमंत्री मोदी, आप, गृह मंत्री अमित शाह बार बार लाल डायरी का मुद्दा उठा रहे हैं। अशोक गहलोत कह रहे हैं ये लाल डायरी बीजेपी के हेडक्वार्टर में बनी है।
ऐसा है ना, सबसे पहले तो बताइए ये राजेंद्र गुड़ा साहब जो थे, इसको लाया कौन था?
गहलोत साहब लाए थे।
ये किसकी पार्टी में थे? ये किसके मंत्री थे? और बतौर मंत्री विधानसभा में लाल डायरी दिखा के बोलने वाला कौन शख्स था? सारे पात्र तुम तय करो और तुम्हारे खिलाफ सारी चीजें हो,
वो कह रहे
और तुम हमको बोलो कि हम मैन्युफैक्चर करते हैं।
राजेंद्र गुड़ा,
मैंने सोचा,
वो कह रहे राजेंद्र गुड़ा आप ही के पात्र हैं, सब आपके साथ मिले हुए हैं।
ऐसा है ना, मैं फिर इस पर कहना चाहता हूं कि काल्पनिक दृष्टि से आप अगर इतने इस लेवल पर चले जाएंगे तो उसका तो कोई जवाब नहीं है। मैं तो आपको प्रूफ के साथ बता रहा हूं। बताइए वो आपका कैबिनेट मिनिस्टर था कि नहीं था? बताइए जिस समय उसने लाल डायरी दिखा करके वक्तव्य दिया विधानसभा के अंदर वो खड़ा था कि नहीं था? बताइए उस समय वो आपकी सरकार का मंत्री था कि नहीं था?
क्या आपको लगता है कि
तब तो आप ये भी मेरे पर आरोप लगा दोगे कि 5 साल की सरकार भारतीय जनता पार्टी ने चलाई?
Hello, Moto.
Around here that yet again today a cloud of smog has yet again engulfed the national capital. Remember, over the weekend we saw that there were spells of rain, which meant that the AQI in the national capital had improved significantly. But post Diwali, yet again we are seeing that the AQI in the national capital has yet again deteriorated. The main reason behind this is being said to be the manner in which the norms were flouted by the residents of the national capital even after the orders of the Supreme Court, which meant that there was a blanket ban on bursting of any sort of crackers. That was flouted significantly out here in the national capital, and that is the reason why we are seeing that the AQI out here has yet again deteriorated. Over the next few days, the IMD predicts that the AQI might improve due to the wind conditions, but if you look at the longer run over the next 1 week, the AQI is yet again going to get back into the severe category, which means that it is yet again going to be a troublesome time for the people out here in the National Capital Region, where yet again they would be forced to breathe in the toxic air. Now what remains to be seen as to what new arrangements or schemes can be made by the government to make sure that the AQI remains under breathable levels, because over the past 1 week we have seen that the AQI had deteriorated, which meant that there were a lot of health issues that people of the national capital were actually facing. So the next 1 week is going to be very, very important, especially from the point of view of the Delhi government and the Delhi administration, to make sure that schemes are made and implemented in such a way that the AQI remains under control and it does not become hazardous for the people out here in the national capital.
जैसा दिल्ली सरकार ने कहा था कि फायर क्रैकर्स बर्न नहीं करने, लेकिन उस हिसाब से फायर क्रैकर्स बहुत ज़्यादा जलाए गए हैं दिल्ली में। जहाँ मैं रहता हूँ वहाँ भी मेरे को बहुत देखने को मिला ये, तो मैं परेशान होकर रात को सो नहीं पाया, फिर सुबह साइकिलिंग करने निकल गया। जब से ये न्यूज़ आई थी पराली जल रही है, तो तब से मैं निकलता हूँ फील करने के लिए कि क्या वेदर में चेंज हुआ है या नहीं हुआ है, बट हुआ है चेंज।
ये मतलब पोल्यूशन का ही है ज़्यादा, तो ये नीचे तो बाकी तो सब बढ़िया है। ऐसा मास्क वगैरह भी नहीं लेके आए हम, उधर क्या सब कुछ ठीक है, यहीं पे थोड़ा सा परेशानी है।
Well, the Xi-Biden meet has taken a lot of center stage, but our focus is on the India story and how much of this bonhomie or the lack of it matters to us. But more importantly, the Quad coming in together and taking far greater shape in terms of cooperation among the four nations that have formed the Quad. One of the key members who's pushing the Quad Investors Group is Karl Mehta, and he's with us. He wears a lot of hats, but we'll focus on the investment story and the India story. India not a member of the APEC, but a guest here at the invitation of America, which is hosting it after 2011. We have got the IPEF, something that we've been pushing through, but 4 of the 5 pillars are on. The 5th pillar we have not yet on board because we are wanting to protect our interests. Correct me if I'm wrong, Karl. Where does the India story stand from the US perspective?
Well, first of all, India is a very important partner in the Quad. So, the US, Japan and Australia views India as a very strategic partner. And that's a much more tighter grouping because you're only 4 countries. So we can get a lot done. My organization, which is the Quad Investors, it is a government-enabled but private sector-led organization. And I was appointed as a chairman earlier this year. And we're working on similar economic cooperation, technology transfers, commercialization, and things like that. Look, when it comes to APAC, India, as you rightly said, is still not a full member, but it's a key part of IPEF. And this trade negotiation is always a very friction and difficult one. We were all hoping that that got signed here. There was a lot of effort being made. I heard several times Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal putting full effort for it. But there is, very large number of organizations that all have to sign up. So I think the progress is being made. They've announced the progress. And it should get done in the next, coming months.
With this confidence in India, or is it a compulsion that the world is looking towards India? And let me ask you very honestly, although there is a lot of talk about the growth story, how much people are buying into this story and wanting to really look at India as a market?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a combination of both, right? There is a global compulsion, given that there are some, geopolitical tensions that are rising. And the world has realized that they cannot put all their eggs in one basket, and we have massive concentration risk. We had faced supply chain problems. The COVID was a wake-up call. So all that, and particularly, China has some ambitions which are not something that the West is comfortable with, right? And all that has created an opportunity. So it's in some ways, there is a geopolitical compulsion. But on the other hand, I think the Modi government has made significant progress and concrete progress over the past 8 to 9 years that the world is seeing it. I mean, when we all travel to India, we see infrastructure in terms of roads, better airports, ports are world class, telecommunication infrastructure. India has got Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal was saying that we have better 5G networks in India than some other countries. So I think the infrastructure is getting better. Combine that with a unlimited supply of great talent that India has in terms of engineers and designers or all kinds of people which are skilled, which are young, which are energetic. I think the world sees that, and they look at that as a great opportunity to not only build their design centers, build their manufacturing centers in India, not just as a +1 strategy, but as a strategy just on its own, that India is the next rising power and they need to engage, they need to be part of that growth story. And of course, 1.4 billion people have, with the largest population, they've started consuming. So the internal demand and the domestic demand is also a key driving factor, which will require manufacturing in India, which will require more investments in India. And so it is not just India is not only an export-led economy that what China did over the past 30 years. There is a need for investments in India to just fuel the growth. So American corporations or global Fortune 1000 corporations have to be there in India if they want to address the Indian market.
Yeah. But we're also seeing stories of reverse, that means investments from India into America happening. You've championed something, but there is another way of looking at it. Are Indian companies wanting to move out of the Indian market itself? Money is going out of India where you're actually looking for money coming into India. How do you look at it?
Sure. Look, when an economy is growing and, there is going to be always multiple dimensions to it. There's not going to be just one straight line. So number one, of course, that the Indian companies investing outside is very important. I mean, the example of Epsilon, which is one of our Quad investor partner, investing in the US is fantastic because of the IRA Act. So we would encourage Indian companies to be investing in the United States and take advantage of it. And there is a big market, and where your customers are, in general, the simple business philosophy for growth is follow your customer. So that's fantastic. And, there always has to be a bilateral way of investments. We are not just a taker, but we are also giver. And I also don't use the word taker because just because foreign companies, whether it's the US or others, are investing in India doesn't mean that we are just taking their capital. They are investing in India because they want to go after the Indian consumer, right? And the government is very prudent to not just let the foreign companies come to India and just take the Indian consumer. So there has been policies in place to make sure that they invest in a way that they are doing some value addition. They're building the products. They're creating demand, creating employment, and not just exploiting the Indian consumer and make money out of it and then move out, right? So that's a very prudent, and that's why there has been some, friction with, Tesla. Elon Musk has not invested in the last few years because the Indian government played a very strong negotiating card, which is saying that we're not just going to let you import Chinese components from your Chinese factory, build cars here and sell and make money out of our consumer, right? So I think that is fantastic. Now, the third point that you mentioned, that, Indian companies wanting to, move out, that can be more related to capital markets. Like, I'm seeing companies even in some of my portfolio, which is an operating company in India, but what they would do is that they will move their holdco, their holding company, to either Singapore or Dubai. India has a fantastic FTA between the UAE and India that just got, a few months got signed. So when you want to attract foreign capital, both in terms of equity and debt, it is much more easier for the foreign investors to put the money in a holdco in a Dubai or a Singapore. You also have many options there because investors like optionality. So you as an entrepreneur, like if I was an entrepreneur in India, I would have to do it because I don't want to be limited only to listing on a national stock exchange or a Bombay stock exchange. If I'm in Singapore, I can do a lot more. And it's easy for money movement in and out. I mean, there is still certain policies and processes in India that needs work. I wouldn't say that, everything's great. I mean, think about this FEMA, the foreign exchange. It can be a nightmare, for companies. So if you take direct capital into India, the amount of paperwork, the amount of things that you have to prove to the government that you're honest, the burden of proof is just massive. And government has to cut it down because a lot of times still the bureaucracy, whether it is the income tax department or the other tax department, still operates in the last 70 years of the mindset that the entrepreneur is dishonest or he is out there to cheat us, right? So I still hear from my portfolio company entrepreneurs that the amount of paperwork, the amount of headache that they have to deal with just proving that they're honest is just unbelievable. Now, that is something that we've never seen I've been in the US for 30 years. I've never experienced that. I built 3, large scale companies here in the US and I never experienced that. So I'm hoping that India gets that act together on that and don't treat entrepreneurs. If you want to build an economy, it's the entrepreneurs who build the economy. If you're going to treat entrepreneurs like as if prove you're guilty until you prove yourself innocent, I mean that's completely backward.
Final question: is the confidence scale up, or is it a lot of talk and less action, or do you see that gap also now bridging? And you talked about policy improvement, which is there, but overall, is there a trust deficit or trust remains? That means if we do business with India, we're in a good place. There is a certain level of mistrust with the Chinese now, because so is that a factor for us, or is it purely the policy related issues that need to be corrected?
Yeah, look, investors want one thing which they like is certainty. Okay, as long as there is a certainty in policies, certainty in terms of the structure, they would invest. And what they've found is that there was a stability, despite in all the other markets. India provided in the last 9 years a stable government. There is most investors are betting that this government will continue with if not a significant majority that they got in the previous election, but with some level of majority. So there will be a continuity of the policies. And even if any change in the government, I think there is a rule of law. India is recognized with its democracy for the last 70 years of track record. So there is a single document and the constitution which will be abided by, which is what India is. India is not an autocracy. India is not a country where one person would just overnight change things. So yes, the confidence is definitely up. The trust is very high. In fact, in Quad, we call the four nations as a trusted corridor. And it's fantastic because we are the 35% of the global GDP,
right?
Okay, which is huge. And the 3 out of the 4 countries are a very developed country: US, Japan, and Australia, and they're calling out India as a trusted partner, which is fantastic. So I think overall India is on a roll, but there is also a caution, which is this window of opportunity is very short. Okay. Given the geopolitical situation, given where the world is, India has a very limited time to stand up its capacities and its capability, to clean up its bureaucracy, stop treating like entrepreneurs as if they're criminals. They have to clean up all this act, because if India doesn't do that, they're going to miss this bus. India missed a bus 30 years ago when China became the factory of the world, because India did not have infrastructure and logistics. Today, 30 years later, India does have ports and transportation and logistics because Apple, Samsung, they're manufacturing. But India has all these other hurdles to still clear in order to not miss the bus this time.
So we are in the right direction, but there's a lot more to be done. The slogovers yet remain, if you may use a cricketing parlance. But Carl, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, bye.
Atul Keshup of the USIBC is with us. Atul, it's been a long conversation, and perhaps the first of what's come to fruition, the Tech Innovation Handshake. Can you tell us a little more about this initiative?
Well, Anand, this was a really great opportunity because we had the United States Secretary of Commerce, Gina Raimondo, and we had the Indian Minister of Commerce, Honorable Piyush Goyal, and we had a whole bunch of tech and VC and startup innovators in the room, USIBC members, CII members, and the purpose of it is to talk about how we can, frankly, pour fuel on the fire of U.S.-India innovation. Our countries have to figure out the rules of the road for deep tech and future tech across the 21st century. If we don't do it, someone else will. And so our values are of transparency, they're of democracy, they're of human freedom, they're of innovation, and it is because of that freedom that we have such great innovation in India and the United States. Both governments want to put heavy investment into seeing that grow even stronger, even faster.
But if you look at deep tech, and a lot of it is also capital intensive, so how much of the investments are going to flow? Because is there a roadblock somewhere? Was it discussed that are there hurdles to innovation which you would like to be removed? Were there conversations around that?
So this is the genius of USIBC, is that we bring together companies, Indian and American, world-leading companies, to have conversations with both governments about exactly what are the roadblocks. These may not be intentional roadblocks. This is that the world is changing fast and governments need to adapt. So I really commend both Minister Goyal and Secretary Raimondo for giving so much time to listen to our member companies, hear their views in great detail about exactly how to facilitate even greater startup innovation. Yes, there are some small problems, but in having these friendly conversations, we collaborate with one another.
Now, Has this handshake now taken an official structure? Because there was the intent over the last 6-8 months to try and give it a kind of structure and shape. So what happens next after this conversation, after this?
Well, so this is an outgrowth of the Initiative on Critical and Emerging Technologies, which we were asked at the U.S. Chamber to launch with both governments back in January. Another outbranch of that was the Indus X, which we also launched in June at the U.S. Chamber. Now this is the Startup Innovation Handshake. I think it's going to go a long way toward identifying all of the pain points that need to be removed in order for our two sets of innovation ecosystems to partner with one another. So this now begins a process. We had not only the Department of Commerce in the room, we also had my good friend Tarun Chhabra in the room, who's a senior White House official, and has helped to bring together this technological convergence. So from my perspective, if you look at the strategic, economic, and technological convergence between the United States and India, it is a snowball rolling downhill faster and faster and gathering more and more mass and momentum. I think it's going to have a huge impact on the future happiness of our people, American and Indian. But frankly, because we trust one another, we have the same values, and it was mentioned in this room repeatedly, I think you're going to see that deep tech, future tech innovation be citizen-focused and inherently democratic and dedicated to human freedom.
Final question, Atul. Any timelines where we would see first fructification, if I may say that, of this initiative coming through? And who holds the IP? That's another question, isn't it? Because it's partnership between two companies, but also nations are involved. So has there also been, that bridge also been crossed?
So if I had a crystal ball, I would not be a diplomat and I would not run a trade association. I'd be a billionaire. So I can't answer that question. But what I would say is, if we, who are the world leaders in the digital economy, America and India, if we don't set the rules of the road for the digital economy in the 21st century, someone else will. And it will be very, very bad for us and bad for the world. So for me, my wish list is digital economy, artificial intelligence, semiconductors. These are critical. You know, we've got to get them right, America and India. 1.8 billion free people working together, innovating together for the good of all of humanity. Thank you very much, Anand.
True. Thank you so much.
Go Power.
After the relief that people of the national capital got just a few days ago after light spells of rains had engulfed the national capital, which meant that the AQI had come down significantly and was hovering in the poor category. Now post Diwali, we are seeing that the AQI has again deteriorated. Currently I am reporting from Kartavya and just move to the frame and try and show you in the visuals over here that another layer of smog has yet again engulfed the national capital. But remember, this is not only smog, but what experts are saying that there is element of fog that is also in these visuals that you are seeing on your screens right now. So yes, the AQI has deteriorated after Diwali, but remember the AQI was already in the severe category at least 2 to 3 days ago, and today as well the AQI is still hovering within the very poor to poor category, but yet it is still very, very difficult for people to breathe out here. Remember the manner in which the Supreme Court orders of not bursting any sort of crackers was flouted yesterday. There were several cases that were seen out here in the national capital where this order of the Supreme Court of not bursting any sort of cracker was definitely flouted. In fact, the fire department itself had got more than 100 calls till 10 p.m. itself. So it actually shows that the people of the national capital, in fact, the majority of the people of the national capital were actually not bursting crackers, but yes, there was a significant number who were seen flouting these norms and bursting crackers, because of which we are seeing that the AQI has yet again deteriorated out here in the national capital and is yet again in the very, very poor category. Now today, the prediction from the IMD is that once the sun is out, the wind speeds are likely to pick up and these pollutants would yet again be washed away. And that is the only silver lining for the people out here in the national capital. But remember, over the next few days as well, the AQI is likely to remain in the poor to very poor category. And in fact, is likely to deteriorate yet again in the severe category as well because of the wind directions. Now what remains to be seen is to what new plans can the Delhi government and the Delhi administration make sure that they initially make, and make sure that is implemented on the ground to the T, so that some sort of immediate relief can be provided to the people out here in the national capital who have been suffering from this deteriorating air quality for at least the last 10 days. Currently, I am reporting from the pollution hotspot out here in the national capital, that is the Anand Vihar bus terminal, and if I could just show you in the visuals around here, the visibility is not as bad as it was